Now, Alex, I'm a big fan of Senate estimates, and I think you do an amazing job there. So I hope next year that you guys will be looking very closely at what the bureaucracy is doing about the threat to us from radical Islam. The Prime Minister can't even mention the words radical Islam. The closest we got was a reference to ISIS, but that was it. Other than that, it's all weasel words, it's this and that and da-da-da-da. If the Prime Minister can't mention the words radical Islam, then clearly none of the bureaucrats are even going to have it on their memos, are they?
Yeah, look, no, I think it's very unlikely. I mean, even I think that process is really important, and it's going to be a very interesting one next year. But I've asked these questions many times. I mean, one of the points that I've made for a long period of time is that many of our agencies, our security agencies, want to talk about the threat of right-wing Christian nationalists.
Yep.
You know, and we hear all about it. And in fact, ASIO's annual report is just littered with references to right-wing Christian nationalism. And yet the only times that we see these events rolling out on our streets are through what would be described as radical Islamic terror. And that is just a demonstrable fact. And yet it seems that the only way it can be spoken about in those chambers, in the halls of Parliament, is to use the phrase religiously motivated extremism. Now, that may well be accurate, but you're right that we have to start calling this what it is. It is absolutely critical, because if we don't know what we're dealing with, then how do we know what we can do to fix it? And how do we know whether or not the problem is already too far advanced? That's the thing that bothers me.
And it's not only the bureaucrats in the government, it's the ABC who deny the religious component of all of this radical Islamic terrorism. Have a listen to Laura Tingle, most disgraceful comment earlier in the week.
Got nothing to do with religion.
And absolutely are radicalised. They were targeting Jews. It is anti-Semitic, but we are ascribing all sorts of things, right?
Yeah, their actions are not based on their religion.
Alex, this is the billion-dollar ABC that every Australian taxpayer funds, supposed to be the font of all knowledge, the great leveller, the great reporter on what's really happening in the world, and they refuse to accept, or Laura Tingle does, that Islamic radical terrorism is based on religious teachings.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very fine point, if it's one at all. I mean, I suspect the point that was trying to be made there was that the Quran doesn't teach this, which, you know, is ostensibly right. But that's not the point. We don't need our broadcasters trying to find ways around saying what we need to say, and that is the fact that there can be no other way of looking at this, that it was, you know, a form of radical Islamic terror, you know, and allegedly, as you say. But I mean, the fact here is that where we are up to now is not going to be solved by clever word plays, by dancing around the mulberry bush. It's not going to be saved by introducing new laws which impinge on free speech. I mean, I note that we have already had a raft of those, and it doesn't seem like any of the banning of symbols and gestures had much of an impact on there. It doesn't seem like any of the incessant discrimination laws that we've had have had an impact on the event in Bondi, sadly. And we certainly don't need to be making more laws impinging on the rights of lawful firearm ownership in this country. I mean, these are not the things that are going to help. We've got to be clear, we've got to be frank, we've got to be honest about what happened. And that means that we've got to look to the future in terms of how we have imported this problem and leaving law-abiding Australians and those that want to speak their mind on legitimate political issues alone.
And mentioning that, Alex, the Governor-General blamed misinformation and disinformation. Can you believe it? Richard Marles blamed Nazis and so on and so on. But let me ask you, as the son, very proud son of proud immigrants into this country, what do you think the immigration policy you would like to see under a coalition government should be?
Well, I mean, the flow, I mean, there are two issues here. The first is the overall number, of course. And I mean, I think we can all safely say that the numbers that are coming in are alarming, and they are not in the interests of this country at the moment. One of the problems I think we've got is that too long politics has dealt with international obligations used as a sort of a metaphor for doing what they like when they don't actually serve Australians. So I think the numbers have to be stopped. I mean, I would like to see them ceased. Obviously, there are areas where we do need niche migration and whatever. But I think that tap has got to be turned off. And in fact, you know, I think that we need to talk about that quickly, because it may well be that there are as many as 1.5 million new entrants into this country since the last 2022 election. This is not a question now of nuance. It's a question of taking firm action and actually getting to the bottom of turning off the tap. It's just not sustainable. And of course, we should say the events of Bondi aren't related to that issue. They're related to, decades ago. But, the overall push here has got to stop. Australians are struggling. We have to be Australia first. We have to look to what's in the best interests of Australia, and that is turning off that tap.
And I would add to that, Alex, the failure of assimilation. As I said, your parents came here, and look at you, great Aussie success story. But it's the idea of assimilation that we have sadly allowed to disappear. That's it. Thanks so much, Alex Antic.